Hey, church family, I hope you're having a great time with your November community group. Thank you for taking the time to get together. I hope you've had a fun time so far being able to visit, have a meal together, and now we're looking forward to a time of Bible study and discussion. I reference a lot of different scriptures many times, and I realize that because I'm often told, you reference Psalm 90 quite a bit. And so tonight I want to do exactly the same thing and reference a verse out of Psalm 90 that means a lot to me. Psalm 90 is a great psalm because it starts out as saying, a psalm of Moses, the man of God. And I like that statement being made about Moses. I hope it's a statement that can be made of me and made of each one of you, that you are a man or a woman of God. To be a man or a woman of God means that you have God's interests in the first place in your heart, your mind, and your life. And that's really what we see with Moses. He was a man who was determined to follow in God's ways and God's steps. Let me read just a portion of Psalm 90 with you today because Moses sets up the hardships and the brevity of life and then has a very specific solution to those truths. Listen to what he says in Psalm 90, starting in verse 1. He says, "Lord, you have been our dwelling place in all generations. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. You return man to dust and say, Return, O children of man. For 1,000 years in your sight are but as yesterday when it is past, or as a watch in the night." He says later in verse 7, "For we are brought to an end by your anger. By your wrath we are dismayed. You have set our iniquities before you, our secret sins in the light of your presence." He says in verses 10 and 11, "The years of our life are 70, or even by reason of strength 80, yet their span is but toil and trouble. They are soon gone, and we fly away. Who considers the power of your anger and your wrath according to the fear of you?" So Moses in these different verses, again, has set up the hardness of life and the brevity of life, saying, hey, a person's years are 70 years, maybe if they're strong enough, they're 80 years. And he says we've suffered, we've had hardships, we've had others come against us. And then this is what Moses says in verse 12. "So teach us to number our days aright, that we may gain a heart of wisdom." Now I like that prayer because Moses says, even though our time is difficult and even though our time in this world is short, we can still learn how to use each day wisely. I want to think for just a moment tonight about time and how to use it. In one 24-hour period, there are 86,400 seconds. There are 1,440 minutes, and as I've already said, there are 24 hours. Each one of those groupings of numbers represent a full day. Now, if you sleep for 8 hours a day, then that means that you have 16 hours of productive time available to you. Typically, we work 8 to 10 hours of work each day. That leaves us with about 6 to 8 hours of discretionary time. What's included in that discretionary time can be our commute to work. It can be cooking and preparing meals, taking kids to activities and games, which is a growing struggle for many of us, I know. It gives you opportunities to join in Bible studies, maybe to go on a date, to relax, to exercise if you're into that sort of thing. And so you have all this time that you can kind of decide how you're going to use it apart from when you're sleeping and when you are at work. But I want you to listen to this. The average person spends up to 40% of their waking time on some sort of screened device. So that means that if you are awake for somewhere around 8 to 10, for somewhere around 16 hours a day, then you are likely spending just over 7 hours of your awake time on some sort of screened device. This can be computers, this can be streaming shows on Netflix, this can be your cell phone. Really, this doesn't take much into account the amount of time that you might be on a computer screen for work. This is really speaking about more of time that isn't really productive. It's just time that you decide to spend looking at some screened device. Now, I say all of that to challenge you and to challenge myself whenever we are tempted to make the statement of, I wish I could do blank, but I just don't have the time. What I want to challenge you, and I challenge myself the same thing, is this: to realize you do have the time. I have the time. Fact is, we probably are wasting more time than we are intentionally using. Now, I want to ask this question to you. Of all the time that you have, how many of your hours in the day are available for kingdom use? Now, what I mean by kingdom use is I mean how much of your time each day are you saying, God, if you'll send somebody my way, I'll talk to them. God, I have this concern. I'm going to pray to you about it and speak to you about it. God, I just want to be used by you today. How many of those hours a day are you making yourself available for kingdom use? Now, I'll tell you how much time in the day you can be available for kingdom use, and that's all of the day. If you have the right mindset and say, God, I wish and I pray that you would teach me to use my day wisely and intentionally for you. Tonight's community group is going to be a little bit different in the fact that I'd like it to be strongly discussion-based. Because I think the reality is that in your group, where you're meeting, there are people who are struggling with this current season of life saying, I don't know how I'm going to get everything done that has to be done. And they're beginning to feel overwhelmed because of the demands and circumstances of their life. In fact, some people in your group may even be feeling like they're at the point of despair, saying there is no way that I'm going to get through this. And I think there's some in your group that need to hear you share with them how God got you through those difficult times of life. In Titus chapter 2, verses 2 through 6, the Apostle Paul gave instructions for how older men are to instruct younger men and for how older women are to instruct younger women. And this is going to be one of the passages that you'll read together as a group here in just a moment. But I want you to understand that just as there are doctrinal instructions that we can pass on to other generations, there are also practical types of instruction that we can pass on. And all of those instructions focus in on God's faithfulness. You know, there are some possible seasons that you may be going through in life right now, and I hope that you understand that your faith can shape that season. Maybe you're a student and you're trying to figure out how you're going to complete your homework, how you're going to study for tests, how you're going to participate in all of your extracurricular activities, how you're going to take care of chores, and how you're going to spend time with friends. And you're just saying, I don't think I can do everything that has to be done. Maybe there's an adult in your group that can speak into your life. Perhaps you're a young married couple and you're trying to figure out how do we guard time to foster the greatest friendship that we have in our life, and that is your spouse. How do you find time to really grow as friends together? Maybe you're a young family and you're trying to balance nap times and doctor's appointments and careers, and you're trying to find time together as a husband and wife. Perhaps you're a middle-aged family and you have sports and careers and school and vacation, and you're trying to figure out how to spend time together as husband and wife. Maybe you're grandparents. You still are working. You still have a career. You have your grandkids that you want to be with. You have vacations, and you're still trying to figure out how to spend time together. Maybe the stage of life that you're in is you're a retiree, and whatever you do, you're trying to figure out, how am I going to fit it all in between my appointments, my responsibilities, my time with family, and my time with my spouse? How am I going to use this day? I hope that in this next few minutes of discussion, if you're struggling in your season of life, that you'll be willing to share it, open enough to share your struggles. And I know that there's going to be someone else in your group who's going to be able to speak truth into your life of how God taught them to manage their days wisely so that He could be honored in every way. So have a great time tonight, and thank you again for being part.